Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everyone, and a huge thank you for joining me today because what we are about to explore might completely change the way you look at the humble penny sitting forgotten in your pocket, your drawer, or your old coin jar, and today's unbelievable story centers around the 1986 1 cent coin, a tiny piece of copper-plated zinc that, under certain astonishing circumstances, has been rumored being the key word, to reach values whispered as high as $7 million due to an extraordinary mix of minting errors, transitional metal composition confusion, extreme rarity, collector psychology, auction dynamics, and once-in-a-generation discovery scenarios that fuel the imagination of numismatists across the world. Because 1986 itself was a historic year for Lincoln cents as it marked the official transition from the classic mostly copper composition used for decades to the modern copper-plated zinc format that we still use today, and that transition alone opened the door to a chaotic overlap of old planchets, new planchets, testing batches, misfed blanks, and experimental strikes that would later become the foundation for some of the most valuable mint errors ever theorized. And when you attach the Denver Mint mark to that year, the possibilities grow even more fascinating because Denver was striking enormous volumes of cents at the time, working at high speed under strict production quotas, which is exactly the kind of environment where spectacular errors can and do slip through. And when people talk about a 1986 cent potentially reaching multi-million-dollar value, the conversation almost always begins with the most powerful error type in modern penny collecting, the transitional composition error, because 1986 is the only year when both copper and zinc cents were officially issued for circulation, meaning that under extremely rare circumstances a coin could be struck on the wrong metal planchet intended for a different year, a different composition test batch, or even an experimental alloy never meant for public release. And if a genuine 1986 were discovered struck on a full pre-1982 solid copper planchet with confirmed metallurgical testing to prove it contains around 95% copper instead of the standard zinc core, the numismatic world would erupt instantly because such a piece would represent a major historical blunder at the mint during a pivotal transition, and transitional errors like that from other years have already sold for hundreds of thousands to over $1 million, and the hypothetical $7 million figure comes from the idea of an absolutely perfect storm specimen, one that is not only struck on the wrong metal but also preserved in near-perfect mint state condition with blazing original luster, sharp strike, no post-mint damage, and full third-party certification by top grading services. And then there is the possibility of a double-struck transitional error, where the wrong metal planchet not only gets struck but receives a dramatic double strike, off-center strike, or broad strike, creating a visually explosive coin that instantly becomes a trophy piece for elite collectors who compete fiercely for the rarest anomalies. And beyond composition errors, the 1986 is also known among specialists for potential double die varieties. And while most publicly confirmed double dies from that year are modest in value, a hypothetical extreme hub doubling event on both obverse and reverse combined with a transitional planchet could theoretically shatter price records because double dies are created during the die-making process itself, making them true varieties rather than post-strike damage. And if a dramatic double die were discovered showing bold doubling on Lincoln's profile, date, mintmark area, and major lettering like Liberty and In God We Trust, and if the reverse also displayed heavy doubling in 1 cent and E pluribus unum, that coin would instantly be catalogued as one of the most important modern varieties ever found. And when collectors combine that kind of dramatic die variety with the right metal wrong metal scenario, the value potential jumps into an entirely different universe, because now the coin is not just a mint error, it becomes a one-of-a-kind mint event frozen in time. And then there are off-metal strikes that go even further into the realm of legend, such as a 1986 cent struck on a dime planchet, a quarter planchet, or even on a foreign planchet accidentally mixed into U.S. mint production. And while such errors do exist for other years, finding one tied to the transitional chaos of 1986 would add massive historical weight to the piece, especially if the coin still clearly shows the Lincoln design but with missing portions of the rim, underweight mass, or mismatched diameter that proves it was never supposed to be a cent at all. And weight is one of the key diagnostic tools experts use to authenticate these multi-million-dollar possibilities, because a normal 1986 zinc cent weighs about 2.5 grams while a copper cent weighs about 3.11 grams, and a wrong planchet strike will immediately reveal itself on a precision scale, and then comes the layer of surface analysis, where metallurgists use XRF scanning to examine the elemental composition without damaging the coin, looking for copper percentages, zinc levels, and trace elements that match known mint alloys. And the deeper the science confirms the anomaly, the stronger the market confidence becomes, and market confidence is what ultimately pushes a coin from being a fascinating oddity to a multimillion-dollar asset, because at that level, wealthy collectors are not just buying a coin, they are buying a story, a singular historical accident that cannot be repeated, and stories drive the highest prices in numismatics. And the story of a 1986 D cent that escaped the mint as a wrong metal transitional strike, possibly with a double die, possibly double struck, possibly off-center, and preserved in gem condition is the kind of narrative that auction houses dream about, because it attracts global media coverage, museum interest, institutional bids, and competitive ego-driven collecting battles, and then we enter the realm of mint state perfection, because condition alone can multiply a coin's value by 10, 50, or even 100 times, and a flawless MS-68 or MS-69 graded coin with blazing red color and razor-sharp details would sit at the very top of the population report with no rivals, instantly becoming the undisputed finest known example, and that finest known status is a powerful force in the auction world, because registry collectors will pay extreme premiums to own the absolute best, and when the population report shows a 1 next to a coin's grade and variety, the bidding often becomes irrational, driven not by logic but by prestige, and that is exactly how $1,000,000 pennies are born, and beyond physical errors, there are also the so-called mule errors where the obverse and reverse dies do not belong together, such as a Lincoln cent obverse paired with an entirely different denomination's reverse, and while such mules are extraordinarily rare, the chaos of a transitional year like 1986 theoretically increases the probability of odd die pairings during late-night shifts, test runs, or emergency die replacements, and a genuine 1986 D mule involving a cent obverse and an unexpected reverse would instantly rewrite error coin reference books, and the value would be limited only by how many ultra-wealthy collectors decided they absolutely had to own it, and then there is the human psychology layer that turns rare coins into legends, because once a rumor of a $7 million penny begins circulating through social media, collector forums, and YouTube channels, the hunt intensifies, people start checking their change obsessively, old collections get searched, estate hoards get reopened, and sometimes, just sometimes, a genuine monster error emerges from decades of obscurity, and when that happens, the discovery itself becomes part of the value, because first discovery coins often achieve higher prices than equally rare pieces found later. And the Denver Mint connection adds another twist because Denver coins historically receive slightly less public attention than Philadelphia coins, which means rare Denver errors can hide in plain sight for longer periods before being recognized, and that delay in recognition often results in a more dramatic market explosion when the truth finally surfaces, and all of this ties into why the idea of a $7 million 1986 D cent, while extreme, is not pure fantasy when viewed through the lens of numismatic history, because we have already seen modern coins like the 1943 bronze cent, the 1944 steel cent, the 1974 aluminum cent, and ultra-rare double dies cross into 7-figure territory under the right conditions, and the lesson from those coins is always the same: rarity alone is not enough, the coin must combine rarity with a compelling error type, verified authenticity, exceptional condition, and a story that captures the imagination of the public, and 1986 as a transitional year checks that first box in bold red ink. And when you stack transitional metal errors on top of double dies, off-center. Next 2004 1 cent coin, to the channel everyone, and a very warm welcome to all the new viewers who are just joining our growing community of treasure hunters, collectors, and dreamers, because today's story is one that truly proves how an ordinary-looking penny can secretly hold the power to change someone's life forever. And today we are diving deep into the unbelievable legend of the 2004 1 cent coin that under extremely rare circumstances is rumored to be worth as much as $6 million due to a combination of extraordinary minting errors, transitional metal confusion, die varieties, striking anomalies, and the powerful psychology of rarity that drives collectors to pay jaw-dropping sums for the most unusual survivors of the minting process. And at first glance the 2004 Lincoln cent looks just like any other modern penny with Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the familiar Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, produced in massive numbers by the United States Mint. Circulating through millions of hands every single day with hardly anyone paying attention to its tiny details, yet hidden within the ocean of normal examples exists the possibility of a microscopic number of freak accidents that transformed a few ordinary cents into legendary treasures, and the foundation of the $6 million valuation theory begins with the concept of wrong planchet and off-metal strikes. Because by 2004 the United States Mint had long since moved away from solid copper cents and was using copper-plated zinc planchets as the standard composition, meaning every normal 2004 cent should weigh approximately 2.5 grams and display a copper surface over a zinc core, but under extremely rare conditions, a blank intended for another denomination or even another country could accidentally find its way into the cent press, and when that happens the press does not know the difference. It simply strikes whatever metal is fed into it with immense force, creating a cent design on a completely incorrect metal, and these off-metal strikes are among the most valuable and sought-after mint errors in modern numismatics, because they represent a breakdown of multiple layers of quality control at once, and if a genuine 2004 cent were discovered struck on a silver dime planchet, a nickel planchet, a quarter planchet, or even a foreign planchet of unusual composition, the visual impact alone would be dramatic, with missing portions of the design, mismatched diameter, an incorrect weight immediately signaling that something extraordinary had occurred, and weight is one of the first diagnostic tools experts use, because a cent struck on a dime planchet would weigh far less than 2.5 grams, while one struck on a quarter planchet would weigh far more, and once the weight confirms the abnormality, advanced metallurgical tests like XRF scanning can identify the precise alloy composition without damaging the coin, proving beyond doubt that the coin was struck on the wrong metal, and once that level of proof is achieved, the value category shifts instantly from curiosity to world-class rarity, and the $6 million valuation becomes theoretically possible when such a wrong metal strike is combined with extreme condition, dramatic visual errors, and uniqueness, because the market always rewards the rarest of the rare at exponentially higher levels. And then we move into the realm of double dies, which are not simply post-strike damage but actual mistakes created during the die-making process itself when the hub impresses the design into the die more than once at slightly different angles, resulting in double design elements that appear on every coin struck from that die, and while minor double dies are relatively common and often worth only modest premiums, a dramatic double die featuring bold, clearly separated doubling on Lincoln's profile, the date, the word liberty, and in God we trust would immediately elevate a 2004 cent into elite collector territory, and if that same coin also exhibited doubled elements on the reverse in 1 cent, e pluribus unum, and the Lincoln Memorial columns, the significance would multiply even further, because full obverse and reverse double dies are dramatically rarer than single-side varieties, and when collectors talk about million-dollar cents, they are almost always referring to extreme double dies combined with other extraordinary errors, and then there is the possibility of a double strike, where the coin is struck more than once by the press, sometimes with rotation between strikes, sometimes off-center, sometimes partially overlapping, creating a surreal layered image that looks almost like the coin is melting into itself, and a dramatic double strike on a wrong metal planchet with double die characteristics would be so statistically improbable that it would likely be unique. And uniqueness is the single most powerful driver of extreme auction prices, because when there is only one known example, every serious collector who wants it must battle every other serious collector who wants it, and that competition can push prices far beyond rational expectations, and then there are off-center strikes, where the planchet fails to seat properly before being struck, causing part of the design to be missing while the blank metal remains visible. And while minor off-center strikes are fairly common and worth only small premiums, extreme off-center strikes showing 50% or more of the planchet missing while still retaining a fully visible date and mint mark are far rarer, and when extreme off-centering is combined with other errors, the value can escalate rapidly, and broad strikes represent another category where the coin is struck without the retaining collar, causing it to spread outward like a pancake with distorted rims and expanded diameter, and again, by themselves broad strikes are interesting but usually not life-changing, yet when stacked with other high-impact errors they become part of a multimillion-dollar narrative, and then we come to mule errors, which are among the most legendary of all mint mistakes, occurring when two dies that were never meant to be paired together are used in the same press, such as a Lincoln cent obverse paired with a reverse from another denomination or another series entirely. And true mules are so rare that each confirmed example becomes an instant headline in the numismatic world, and if a genuine 2004 cent mule were discovered, especially one involving a mismatched denomination reverse, it would instantly become one of the most important modern era coins ever known, and its value would be limited only by how high elite collectors were willing to bid in pursuit of ownership. And now we step into the fascinating world of transitional and experimental alloys. Because although 2004 is not officially a transitional year like 1982 or 1986, the mint is constantly experimenting with metals, coatings, and planchet treatments behind the scenes for research purposes, and occasionally, experimental blanks or test planchets escape into circulation by accident, and when they do, they create some of the most mysterious and valuable errors ever discovered, because their compositions do not match any officially issued standard. And if a 2004 cent were found struck on an experimental alloy never meant for public release, confirmed by laboratory testing and documented by the mint's internal research history, the historical importance of that coin would be immense, and historical importance is the bridge that carries a coin from mere rarity into cultural artifact status, where museums, universities, and institutional collectors begin competing alongside private buyers. And then there is the subject of die breaks, cuts, and retained cuts, where portions of the die physically break away, leaving raised blobs of metal on the coin where the design is missing. And while many die breaks are common and worth only modest sums, massive, dramatic cuts that obliterate large sections of the design are far rarer and far more desirable, and a colossal retained cut on a 2004 cent, especially one paired with another high-impact error, would drastically increase its appeal and value. And die clashes represent yet another layer, occurring when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, transferring faint ghost-like images from one side onto the other. And while minor clashes are common, extreme clashes showing full mirror image details of the opposite design are much rarer and far more collectible, and again, the value multiplies when multiple error types are present on the same coin, because the odds of multiple independent mistakes occurring together are astronomically low, and the market pays for that improbability. And beyond physical errors, the $6 million legend is also fueled by the human element, because numismatics is not just about metal. It is about stories, discoveries, and competition, and history shows us again and again that once a coin becomes known as a potential multimillion-dollar rarity, the narrative alone can drive values higher, as collectors imagine themselves owning not just a coin but a piece of legend, and the discovery story itself adds a premium, because a coin found in circulation, in a pocket, in a jar, or in an old inherited next 2015 1-cent coin. To the channel everyone, and a huge warm welcome to all the new viewers who are joining us today, because what you are about to hear is one of those unbelievable stories that makes the world of coin collecting feel like a real-life treasure hunt. And today we are diving deep into the extraordinary and almost mythical idea of the 2015 1-cent coin that under extremely rare and highly specific conditions is whispered in collector circles to be capable of reaching a staggering value of $5 million due to a powerful combination of minting errors, striking mistakes, experimental planchets, die anomalies, and the intense psychology of rarity that turns tiny pieces of metal into objects of global fascination and fierce competition. Because at first glance the 2015 Lincoln cent looks completely ordinary, with Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait on the obverse and the Union shield on the reverse, a design that was introduced in 2010 to symbolize Lincoln's preservation of the United States, and billions of these coins were struck and released into circulation where they passed unnoticed through countless hands, cash registers, jars, purses, and pockets. Yet hidden within that massive ocean of identical cents lies the slim but electrifying possibility that a microscopic number of them were born under conditions so unusual and so statistically improbable that they became numismatic unicorns, and the entire $5 million legend begins with the reality that even in the modern age of high-speed computerized minting with advanced quality control, the United States Mint is still a massive industrial operation where machines, human oversight, metal supply chains, and experimental testing all intersect, and wherever that much complexity exists there is always the possibility, however tiny, for something to go spectacularly wrong in just the right way, and one of the most powerful drivers of extreme value for a modern cent. Is the wrong planchet or off-metal strike, because by 2015 the standard Lincoln cent was composed of a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper and weighed approximately 2.5 grams, so any verified 2015 cent that deviates significantly from that weight immediately raises red flags and excitement, and if a cent intended die were to strike a blank meant for another denomination such as a dime, a nickel, a quarter, or even a blank intended for a foreign coin accidentally mixed into the production line, the result would be a cent design impressed onto the wrong metal and often at the wrong diameter and thickness, creating a visually dramatic and scientifically verifiable anomaly, and these off-metal strikes are among the most prized errors in the hobby because they require multiple independent failures at once, a foreign or wrong denomination blank entering the cent line, surviving initial inspection, getting fed into the press, and then escaping final quality control, and each of those failures reduces the statistical odds to a level where only a handful of pieces might ever exist, and if a genuine 2015 cent were found struck on a silver dime planchet with shimmering white metal and a reduced diameter, or on a nickel planchet with a thicker profile and pale surface, or on a quarter planchet with dramatic missing design areas due to the size difference, the visual impact alone would be breathtaking, and once that visual shock is supported by precision weight testing and non-destructive XRF metal analysis confirming the incorrect alloy composition, the coin instantly moves into the highest tier of modern mint errors, and the $5 million valuation becomes theoretically possible when such an off-metal strike is paired with additional high-impact anomalies and near-perfect condition, because the market at that level is driven not by typical price guides but by once-in-a-generation competition among elite collectors, and then we move into the realm of double dies, which are among the most misunderstood yet most valuable categories of mint errors, because unlike coins that are damaged after they leave the mint, double dies are born directly from a flawed die creation process where the hub impresses the design into the die more than once at slightly different positions or angles, causing double design elements that appear on every coin struck from that die. And while most double dies are subtle and worth modest premiums, the truly dramatic examples show bold, clearly separated doubling that can be seen with the naked eye on Lincoln's profile, the date, Liberty, and in God We Trust, and when a double die also appears on the reverse affecting 1 cent, e pluribus unum, and the shield details, the rarity multiplies dramatically, and if a 2015 cent were confirmed to carry a massive obverse and reverse double die never before documented, it would instantly become one of the most important double die varieties of the modern era. And when a double die of that magnitude is paired with a wrong metal strike, the probability becomes so vanishingly small that the coin would almost certainly be unique, and uniqueness is the most powerful word in the vocabulary of multimillion-dollar numismatics, because when there is only one confirmed example, every collector who wants it must compete for that single opportunity, and then comes the possibility of a dramatic double strike, where the coin is struck more than once by the press, sometimes with rotation between strikes, sometimes off-center, sometimes partially overlapping, creating ghosted images, duplicated dates, and surreal layered impressions that look like time itself slipped during the strike, and a violent, rotated double strike on an off-metal planchet that also shows double die characteristics would represent an almost impossible convergence of minting disasters. And it is exactly that kind of impossible convergence that generates legendary prices, and off-center strikes add another layer to this story, because when a planchet fails to seat properly in the collar before being struck, part of the design can be missing while a crescent of blank metal remains visible, and minor off-centers are relatively common, but extreme off-centers showing 50% or more of the blank with a fully visible date and mint mark are far rarer and far more valuable, and when extreme off-centering is combined with other top-tier errors it becomes a multiplier rather than a mere additive factor, and broad strikes represent yet another striking failure where the retaining collar does not engage and the coin spreads outward under pressure, producing distorted rims and an expanded diameter, and while broad strikes by themselves are usually not worth fortunes, when they occur alongside double dies, off-metal strikes, or double strikes they become part of a larger narrative of catastrophic press failure that collectors find irresistible, and then we arrive at mule errors, which are among the rarest and most sensational mistakes the mint can produce, occurring when two dies that were never meant to be paired together are used in the same press, such as a cent obverse paired with a reverse from another denomination or series, and true mules are so rare that each confirmed example becomes a headline in the numismatic world. And if a genuine 2015-cent mule were ever discovered, especially one involving a mismatched denomination reverse, it would instantly become one of the most important modern-era coins ever known, and its value would be limited only by how aggressively elite collectors were willing to compete. And then we enter the mysterious world of experimental alloys and test planchets, because even in years with no official composition changes, the mint is constantly testing new metals, coatings, and manufacturing techniques behind the scenes for research, cost control, and long-term durability studies, and occasionally experimental blanks escape into circulation by accident, creating coins whose compositions do not match any officially issued standard. And if a 2015 cent were found struck on such an experimental alloy confirmed by laboratory testing and linked to internal mint research programs, the historical significance of that coin would be enormous, because it would represent a piece of hidden mint history never meant for the public, and historical significance is what elevates a coin beyond rarity into the realm of cultural artifact, where museums, universities, and institutional collections begin to compete alongside wealthy private collectors. And then there are die breaks, cuds, and retained cuds, which occur when a piece of the die physically breaks away, leaving raised blobs of metal on the coin where the design should be. And while small die breaks are common, massive cuds that obliterate large sections of the design are far rarer and far more dramatic, and a gigantic cud on a 2015 cent that also exhibits another primary error could drastically enhance its value and visual impact. And die clashes add another ghostly layer, occurring when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, transferring faint mirror image impressions from one side to the other. And while minor clashes are often ignored, extreme clashes showing strong reverse details of the opposite design are far more desirable and far rarer. And once again, the market rewards the stacking. Next 2022 1-cent coin. To the channel everyone, and a massive warm welcome to all the new viewers who are joining us today, because the story you are about to hear proves once again that even in the most modern era of high-speed technology and strict quality control, a tiny 1-cent coin can still become a life-changing treasure. And today we are diving deep into the astonishing and almost unbelievable world of the 2022 1-cent coin that, under extremely rare and extraordinary circumstances, is believed by collectors to have the potential to reach a staggering $4 million in value because of a powerful convergence of minting errors, mechanical failures, experimental materials, die anomalies, striking chaos, and the unstoppable force of collector psychology that transforms microscopic mistakes into legendary fortunes. Because at first glance the 2022 Lincoln cent appears completely ordinary, with Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and the Union shield on the reverse, a design that has been familiar for over a decade, struck in enormous quantities and released into circulation, where it quietly passed through millions upon millions of hands, with nobody suspecting that hidden among those everyday coins could be a handful of freak accidents so rare that they redefine what a modern penny can be worth. And what makes the 2022 cent especially fascinating is that it was produced in an era of intense pressure on the United States Mint, with supply chain disruptions, staffing challenges, metal sourcing complications, and non-stop production demands that pushed machines and human oversight to their limits. And when any large industrial system is pushed to that level of strain, the probability of rare but dramatic errors quietly slipping through increases. And it is within that environment that the $4 million legend is born. Because the foundation of extreme modern coin value almost always begins with the wrong planchet or off-metal strike. And by 2022 the standard Lincoln cent was composed of a zinc core coated with copper and weighed approximately 2.5 grams, meaning that any verified 2022 cent that significantly deviates from that weight immediately sets off alarms among experts and collectors. And if a cent die were to strike a blank intended for another denomination, such as a dime, nickel, quarter, or even a foreign coin planchet that accidentally entered the production line, the result would be a cent design stamped onto an entirely incorrect metal with the wrong size, thickness, and weight, producing a visually dramatic and scientifically provable error. And such off-metal strikes are among the most prized of all modern mint errors, because they require multiple independent failures to occur at the same time: the wrong blank entering the cent line, bypassing multiple inspection points, being fed into the press, being struck without jamming the machinery, and then escaping final quality control to reach the outside world. And each one of those steps dramatically lowers the statistical odds of survival, and if a genuine 2022 cent were discovered struck on a silver-colored dime planchet with a noticeably smaller diameter, or on a thicker pale nickel planchet, or on a larger quarter planchet with missing portions of the design due to the size mismatch, the visual shock alone would make it instantly famous. And once that visual shock is backed up by precision weight measurements and advanced non-destructive XRF metal analysis confirming the incorrect alloy composition beyond any doubt, that coin would move instantly into the highest tier of modern numismatic errors, and the $4 million valuation becomes theoretically realistic when such a wrong metal strike is paired with near-perfect condition and one or two additional major anomalies. Because at that level collectors are not guided by price guides but by competition for uniqueness, and then we enter the world of double dies, which are among the most misunderstood yet most powerful drivers of value in all of coin collecting, because unlike ordinary damage that happens after a coin leaves the mint, double dies originate during the die creation process itself when the hub impresses the design into the die more than once at slightly different angles or positions, resulting in double design elements that appear identically on every coin struck from that die. And while many double dies are subtle and worth only modest premiums, the truly legendary ones show bold, separated, unmistakable doubling on Lincoln's profile, the date, the word liberty, and in God we trust, and if a 2022 cent were confirmed to carry such a dramatic double die, it would instantly become one of the most important double die varieties of the modern era, and if that doubling also extended to the reverse affecting 1 cent, e pluribus unum, and the fine lines of the Union shield, the rarity would multiply to an almost unbelievable degree, and when collectors dream about multi-million-dollar pennies, they are nearly always imagining this level of dramatic double die paired with other catastrophic errors, and then there is the terrifyingly rare possibility of a double strike, where the coin is struck more than once by the press, sometimes with a partial second strike, sometimes with rotation between strikes, sometimes with off-center overlap, producing surreal ghosted images, duplicated dates, and layered impressions that look like two moments in time collided on the same piece of metal, and a violent rotated double strike on a wrong metal planchet that also shows double die features would represent an almost impossible convergence of independent failures, and it is exactly those almost impossible convergences that produce coins which rewrite valuation history, and off-center strikes add yet another explosive ingredient to this story. Because when a planchet fails to seat properly in the striking collar before the press comes down, part of the design can be missing entirely while a crescent of blank metal remains visible, and minor off-centers are relatively common and worth only small premiums, but extreme off-centers showing 50% or more of the blank while still retaining a fully visible date and mint mark are dramatically rarer and far more valuable, and when extreme off-centering is stacked with wrong metal composition, double dies, or double strikes, the value potential increases not in a straight line but exponentially, and broad strikes represent another form of mechanical failure where the retaining collar does not engage and the coin spreads outward under immense pressure, producing distorted rims and an expanded diameter, and while broad strikes alone are usually not worth fortunes, when they appear alongside other primary errors they become part of a larger narrative of catastrophic press malfunction that elite collectors find irresistible, and then we arrive at the extremely rare and headline-generating category of mule errors, which occur when two dies that were never meant to be paired together are used in the same press, such as a Lincoln cent obverse matched with a reverse from a different denomination or an entirely different coin series, and true mules are among the rarest mint mistakes known to numismatics, with some categories having only a handful of confirmed examples in existence. And if a genuine 2022 cent mule were ever discovered, especially one involving a mismatched denomination reverse, it would instantly become one of the most important modern era coins in the world, and its value would be limited only by how aggressively the wealthiest collectors and institutions were willing to compete for ownership, and then we step into the mysterious realm of experimental alloys and test planchets, because even in years with no official composition changes the mint is constantly researching new metals, coatings, bonding methods, and surface treatments to reduce costs, improve durability, and prepare for future transitions, and occasionally experimental blanks escape into circulation by accident, producing coins with compositions that do not match any officially issued standard, and if a 2022 cent were discovered struck on such an experimental alloy confirmed by laboratory testing and linked to internal mint research, its historical importance would be immense, because it would represent a secret chapter of mint history never meant to reach. The public and historical importance is the bridge that carries a coin beyond simple rarity into the realm of cultural artifact, where museums, universities, and institutional collections begin competing alongside wealthy private collectors, and then there are die breaks, cuts, and retained cuts, which occur when a portion of the die physically fractures or breaks away, leaving a raised blob of metal on the coin where the design should be, and while small die breaks are relatively common and often ignored, massive cuts that wipe out large sections of the design are far rarer and far more dramatic, and a gigantic retained cut on a 2022 cent that also exhibits another major error could drastically enhance both its visual impact and market value, and die clashes add yet. Next 2023 1 cent coin, to the channel everyone, and a huge heartfelt welcome to all the new viewers who have just joined our incredible community of coin lovers, treasure hunters, and everyday dreamers, because today's story is one of those that truly reminds us why people around the world still check their change with curiosity and hope. And today we are diving deep into the astonishing and almost unbelievable legend of the 2023 1 cent coin, a modern penny that under extraordinarily rare and highly specific circumstances is believed by collectors to carry the potential to reach a staggering value of $3 million because of an explosive combination of minting errors, mechanical failures, experimental materials, die anomalies, striking chaos, and the unstoppable power of rarity and human imagination that can transform a tiny piece of metal into a life-changing fortune. Because at first glance the 2023 Lincoln cent looks completely ordinary with Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait on the obverse and the Union shield on the reverse, a design that has circulated for years and blends seamlessly into the daily river of pocket change moving through shops, markets, gas stations, and homes across the world. Yet hidden within that vast flood of ordinary pennies lies the razor-thin possibility that a microscopic number of them were born under circumstances so unusual and statistically improbable that they became modern numismatic legends, and the year 2023 itself adds a fascinating layer to this story because it was a time when the global economy, supply chains, and industrial systems were still feeling the ripple effects of instability, labor shortages, material sourcing disruptions, and non-stop production pressure, and when massive industrial systems like national mints operate under that level of constant strain, the chances of rare and dramatic errors quietly escaping detection increase, not in large numbers but just enough to create those once-in-a generation discoveries that rewrite what a modern coin can be worth, and the entire $3 million legend begins with the most powerful driver of extreme modern coin value, the wrong planchet or off-metal strike, because by 2023 the Lincoln cent was firmly established as a copper-plated zinc coin weighing approximately 2.5 grams, meaning that any verified 2023 cent that significantly deviates from that standard weight immediately triggers excitement, suspicion, and intense investigation. And if a cent die were to strike a blank intended for another denomination such as a dime, a nickel, a quarter, or even a foreign planchet that accidentally entered the cent production stream, the result would be a cent design impressed onto a completely incorrect metal with the wrong thickness, diameter, and density, creating a visually dramatic and scientifically provable anomaly that instantly separates itself from the ocean of normal coins, and these off-metal strikes are among the most sought-after errors in the entire hobby because they represent the failure of multiple independent quality control systems at once, the wrong blank entering the production line, surviving inspection, being fed into the press, being struck without jamming machinery, and then escaping final inspection to reach circulation, and each one of those steps dramatically reduces the statistical odds of survival, which is exactly why confirmed off-metal strikes command such staggering premiums, and if a genuine 2023 cent were found struck on a silver-colored dime planchet with a noticeably smaller diameter and brilliant metallic sheen, or on a thicker nickel planchet with a pale matte surface and extra mass, or on a larger quarter planchet with missing portions of the design due to the size mismatch, the visual shock alone would instantly turn that penny into a worldwide sensation. And once that visual impact is supported by precision weight measurements and advanced non-destructive XRF metal analysis confirming the incorrect alloy composition beyond any doubt, the coin would immediately enter the highest tier of modern mint errors, and the $3 million valuation becomes theoretically possible when such a wrong metal strike is paired with near-perfect mint state condition and one or two additional high-impact anomalies, because at that level of collecting, Value is not driven by price guides but by the intense competition for uniqueness and ownership of something that may never appear again, and then we enter the complex and often misunderstood world of double dies, which are among the most powerful and legitimate drivers of rarity in coin collecting because they are created during the die manufacturing process itself when the hub impresses the design into the die more than once at slightly different angles or positions, resulting in double design elements that appear identically on every coin struck from that die, and while many double dies are so subtle that only specialists notice them, the legendary ones show bold, separated, unmistakable doubling on Lincoln's profile, the date, the word liberty, and in God we trust, and if a 2023 cent were ever confirmed to carry such a dramatic double die, it would instantly become one of the most important double die varieties of the modern era. And if that same doubling also extended to the reverse affecting 1 cent, e pluribus unum, and the fine lines of the Union shield, the rarity would multiply to an almost unimaginable level, and when collectors imagine multi-million-dollar modern pennies, they are usually imagining this kind of dramatic obverse and reverse double die paired with another catastrophic error, and then there is the terrifyingly rare possibility of a double strike, where the same planchet is struck more than once by the press, sometimes with a partial second strike, sometimes with rotation between strikes, sometimes with off-center overlap, producing surreal ghosted images, duplicated dates, and layered impressions that look like two separate moments in time collided on the same piece of metal, and a violent rotated double strike on a wrong metal planchet that also shows double die characteristics would represent an almost impossible convergence of independent failures. And it is exactly these almost impossible convergences that give birth to coins that shatter valuation expectations and enter the realm of legends, and off-center strikes add yet another explosive ingredient to this story because when a planchet fails to seat properly in the striking collar before the press comes down, part of the design may be missing entirely while a crescent of blank metal remains visible, and while minor off-center strikes are relatively common and worth small premiums, extreme off-center strikes showing 50% or more of the blank while still retaining a fully visible date and mint mark are dramatically rarer and far more valuable, and when extreme off-centering is stacked with wrong metal composition, double dies, or double strikes, the value potential increases not gradually but exponentially, and broad strikes represent another form of mechanical failure where the retaining collar does not engage and the coin spreads outward under immense pressure, producing distorted rims, stretched lettering, and an expanded diameter, and while broad strikes alone are usually not worth fortunes, when they appear alongside other primary errors they become part of a larger narrative of catastrophic press malfunction that elite collectors find irresistible, and then we arrive at the headline-generating and exceedingly rare category of mule errors, which occur when two dies that were never meant to be paired together are accidentally used in the same press, such as a Lincoln cent obverse matched with a reverse from a different denomination or an entirely different coin series. And true mules are among the rarest mistakes in all of numismatics, with some categories having only a handful of confirmed examples worldwide, and if a genuine 2023 cent mule were ever discovered, especially one involving a mismatched denomination reverse, it would instantly become one of the most important modern era coins known, and its value would be limited only by how fiercely wealthy collectors, institutions, and museums were willing to compete for ownership. And then we step into the mysterious and often hidden world of experimental alloys and test planchets. Because even in years with no official composition changes, the mint is constantly researching new metals, coatings, bonding techniques, and manufacturing processes to improve durability and reduce costs, and occasionally experimental blanks escape into circulation by accident, producing coins whose compositions do not match any officially issued standard. And if a 2023 cent were discovered struck on such an experimental alloy confirmed by laboratory testing and connected to internal mint research programs, the historical importance of that coin would be enormous, because it would represent a secret chapter of modern mint history never intended for public hands, and historical importance is what elevates a coin beyond simple rarity into the realm of cultural artifact, where museums, universities, and institutional collections begin to compete alongside wealthy private collectors. And then there are die breaks. Last 2017, P1 cent coin, the channel everyone, and thank you once again for being here because today's story is one that proves that even in the modern age of highly controlled minting technology, computerized presses, laser-guided dies, and microscopic quality control, miracles and mistakes can still happen that turn an ordinary everyday penny into a legendary treasure. And our focus today is on the astonishing mystery surrounding the 2017 P1 cent that under the most extreme and rare circumstances is rumored to reach values as high as $2 million, a figure that sounds unbelievable at first but begins to make sense when you truly understand how minting errors, transitional varieties, catastrophic die failures, experimental metals, and once-in-a-lifetime coincidences can converge into a single coin that becomes more than just money and transforms into a historic artifact coveted by elite collectors around the world, because 2017 itself was a very unusual year in modern U.S. minting history, as it marked the first time in decades that Lincoln cents were officially struck at the Philadelphia Mint with a visible P mint mark for circulation, making every 2017 P cent instantly different from nearly every other circulating Philadelphia cent produced since 1980, and that alone created an environment of intense public interest, massive saving behavior, hoarding, and microscopic inspection by collectors who knew that whenever a long-standing tradition is broken, the probability of dramatic errors rises sharply, not because the machines suddenly become careless, but because new dies must be prepared, new workflows are introduced, new inspection routines are tested, and new human habits have to adapt to those changes, and it is precisely during such transitions that some of the most spectacular mistakes in minting history are born. And when we talk about a $2 million 2017 P cent, we are not talking about an ordinary example pulled from pocket change, we are talking about a hypothetical perfect storm of errors layered on top of one another in a way that almost defies probability, yet history has shown again and again that probability does not prevent reality, because if it did, bronze 1943 cents, steel 1944 cents, aluminum experimental strikes, Ron planchet nickels, and mule coins would not exist, and yet they do, and each one of those rare survivors has rewritten price expectations for modern coinage, and that same possibility lingers over the 2017 P cent like a quiet thundercloud waiting for the right discovery to ignite the storm, and the first and most powerful category that could push a 2017 P cent into seven-figure territory is a wrong metal strike, because under normal conditions all modern cents are struck on copper-plated zinc planchets weighing approximately 2.5 grams. But the U.S. Mint also strikes enormous volumes of planchets for other denominations composed of different alloys, including solid copper for certain commemoratives, copper nickel for dimes and quarters, pure nickel for some foreign contracts, manganese brass for dollar coins, and various experimental alloys for testing purposes, and if even a single blank of the wrong composition slips into the cent press during a high-speed production run, the result is an off-metal strike that immediately becomes one of the most dramatic and valuable categories of mint error, and if a genuine 2017 P cent were ever authenticated as being struck on a solid pre-1982 copper planchet with full XRF confirmation showing approximately 95% copper content, it would instantly become one of the rarest transitional style errors of the modern era, even though 2017 itself was not a transitional metal year, because that would imply the survival of obsolete copper planchets within modern production streams. A scenario that should be nearly impossible under normal accounting procedures, and impossibility is exactly what collectors pay for. And then the value would climb even higher if the coin were struck on a dime planchet, a quarter planchet, or even a foreign blank, because mismatched diameter, wrong weight, missing rim segments, and distorted design elements create visual proof of the error that electrifies auction rooms and online bidding wars, and weight becomes one of the first diagnostic tools in such cases, because a 2017 P cent struck on copper should weigh about 3.11 grams instead of 2.5, and one struck on a dime planchet would weigh closer to 2.27 grams with reduced diameter and partial design loss, and one struck on a quarter blank would be dramatically larger with stretched details and a flattened rim, and these physical facts allow experts to separate genuine 6- and 7-figure errors from plated novelties and altered coins that flood the market as fantasies, and beyond metal composition errors. The next massive value multiplier comes from die stage catastrophes such as dramatic double dies. Because double dies are created during the hubbing process when the master design is impressed onto the working die more than once in misaligned positions, creating doubled images that become part of every coin struck from that die, and while minor doubling exists on many modern coins, the kind that fuels multimillion-dollar valuations is bold, naked-eye doubling visible without magnification on Lincoln's profile, the date, the mint mark, and the major inscriptions, and if a 2017 p-cent were discovered with massive spread hub doubling on both obverse and reverse, not just machine doubling but true double die characteristics with rounded secondary images, separation lines, and consistent directionality, it would instantly become the single most important double die of the entire modern zinc cent era. And that alone could place it into six-figure or low seven-figure territory even before additional errors are considered, and when double dies combine with wrong metal planchets, the value escalation becomes exponential rather than linear, because now the coin is no longer just rare in one way, it is rare in multiple independent dimensions at once, and layered rarity is the secret behind the highest auction prices in numismatics. And then we enter the world of striking errors such as broad strikes, off-center strikes, double strikes, and capped dies, because during high-speed minting, planchets can misalign, stick to dies, tilt, flip, or fail to eject properly, creating coins that are partly struck, struck twice, struck with no collar, or struck while another coin is still stuck to the die face, and while many of these errors occur frequently enough to be affordable, the extreme examples are incredibly rare, especially when they show full visible mint marks, clear dates, and dramatic deformation, and a fully struck off-center 2017 p-cent showing the entire date and mint mark while missing 40 to 60% of the planchet would already be worth a significant premium. But if that same off-center strike also happened to be on the wrong metal and from a double die, the value would leap into territory where museums, billionaires, and institutional collections begin to compete, and then there are die break errors so massive that they create raised blobs, missing sections, or shattered die states that literally rewrite the coin's design in mid-strike, creating one-of-a-kind patterns that will never appear again because the die is destroyed immediately after detection, and a catastrophic shattered die on a 2017 p-cent that leaves Lincoln partially missing or the reverse design distorted into abstract metal waves could become the only example of its kind in existence. And uniqueness is the ultimate currency in high-end collecting, because rarity can be quantified, but uniqueness cannot be replicated. And uniqueness always finds a buyer at the highest levels of the market. And then there is the mythic category of mule errors where dies from two different denominations are paired together, such as a Lincoln cent obverse paired with a Roosevelt dime reverse or a cent reverse paired with an entirely different obverse, and while such errors are nearly unheard of, they have occurred in U.S. mint history and have sold for enormous sums because they represent a total systemic failure in die handling procedures, and a 2017 p-cent mule would instantly become a modern legend, not only because of the visible p-mint mark novelty but because it would represent the most shocking die pairing disaster of the computerized minting era. And when people talk about $2 million for a 2017 p-cent, it is this class of error they are imagining, not an ordinary doubled ear or minor die chip. And then we must consider the survival rate factor, because even if such a coin were struck, the probability that it would be detected before leaving the mint is extremely high, and even if it escaped, the probability that it would survive circulation without being damaged, bent, scratched, corroded, or lost is astonishingly low, and survival in pristine or near pristine condition is what turns an already rare error into a financial supernova, because condition is the lens through which all rarity is magnified, and a coin graded MS68 or MS69 red with full original copper luster and no post-mint damage is not just a coin, it is the pinnacle of preservation, and registry set collectors will fight